Tonight we have another installment of our object lessons for daily living. I thank Charlie Parsons for turning this one in. In fact, this is the one that I would expect him to turn in, because a Christian is like a lawnmower, and that's what I see Charlie doing most of the time. You drive by his house or come out here to the building, he's on a lawnmower. And so the thoughts that he arranged and put together, I took them and used them and thought about them, and I think there is some powerful material there about how to think of a Christian as a lawnmower. Now, I want, first of all, to remind all of us why it is that I'm doing this. The power of Jesus' preaching was often based on the fact that he was able, with the people there, to talk to them about something on their level. And when he would bring up a subject or he'd bring up an idea, he always had it couched in a way that they could hardly miss it. It might be because, and one of the most vivid to me from my time in college when I was doing some master's work, and I heard the professor make a statement just from a text that I'd never seen it that way before. You know the story of Jesus and the woman at the well, and how he was talking with her about real living water, and he was able to convince her that he had this water that she could ask for. And the text says that she went back into the city and told everybody whom she had met. The disciples came out. They had been looking for food for them to eat, and they came out, and Jesus said, "Well, I have food you don't know about," meaning I'm satisfied because I've been preaching the gospel. And they were talking about some things, and finally Jesus said, "Look up, look. The fields are all ready for harvest." Now, I've heard it said that he looked up and he saw the fields ready to be harvested. The farmer could go out there and harvest. That might be right. But the visual lesson that I think fits the scenario better was that he told his disciples, "Look." And coming out of that city were all the people that this woman had just talked to and said, "Come meet the man I have heard about. Look, the fields are ready for harvest." What a powerful lesson, visual lesson that was for the disciples about evangelism and about reaching out and speaking to those people who are in need. Well, that's why I think object lessons are good. They are valuable, and they stick with you. You may not remember every point, but every time you see one of these objects, it's going to strike a chord with you and say, "Oh yeah, I remember." So tonight I want you to think about how a Christian is like a lawnmower. And we're going to use two things, different types of lawnmowers, and yet what they all need. Let's begin with this mower. How many of you ever used one of these? Is it showing up there? Yeah. You ever used one of these? That's the old kind. You know, when I first started working on this, I thought, here would be a great way of doing it. We could talk about the different types of people in the church. These are the old guys. But I thought, no, that's not what I'm going to do. Here's a mower. Some of you may not have even seen one if you're very young. It really does work. But here's what it represents to me. Here is the mower that, while it does cut and it does do some things, this is the mower that represents the nature of a person before he becomes a Christian. Because there is no power in this mower whatsoever. It's all powered by the one who is doing the pushing. The blades will turn as fast as the person pushing it. This is the person who is without the power available. It does not exist with this mower. Of Jesus it was said in Romans 6 and verse 5, when we were yet without strength, no power, Jesus died for the ungodly. Paul would say later in chapter 7 and in verse 16, I know in me, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For the desire to do what I ought to do is there, but I do not find how to do it. This kind of mower represents the person who is going through life without power, real power, without strength. Powerless, because the power that is available has never been accessed. I hope that that's not you. And yet I know that there are some people in this room who have not taken advantage of the power of Jesus. You are still in your sins. You have never obeyed the gospel. You've never obeyed Jesus. You've never given your life to Him. He died for you when you were ungodly, and you still are. And yet you've never said, Lord, I'll take the power that you have to offer. You're trying to fight it by yourself, but you will fail in the end, because this is not a powered mower, and it will not accomplish what God wants you to accomplish. So then we power it up. This is the kind of mower that has the power with it. It works really well, and it does a lot of cutting. It does exactly what you want it to do. There's one thing still the same. You got to push it yourself. Now that's the mower that I have. Part of the reason for that is I want to use it as a time to say, okay, I'm still active. I've still got something going. I can still move. I'm pushing the mower. Think about it as it relates to a Christian. This is the mower that represents the Christian who is powered up. Receive the power. Now, this Christian has the strength within him because he has bought into the power of Jesus, but still trying to do all the work yourself. Jesus talked to those people in Matthew chapter 6 when He said, why do you worry? Why are you so consumed with the things of this life? Don't you just look around, He would say. Look at the birds of the air. They don't have nests, and yet your Father feeds them. Are not the flowers in the field beautiful because your Father cares for them? Why do you worry? Can you add by worry 1 cubit to your stature? Worry is the effort of a Christian, in this case, to push his own mower. It's the Christian who has the power within him, but he's so consumed with the things of this life that he's pushing it all along by himself, and therefore he's worried. Why? Because he's not counting on the fact that God will take care of you. Therefore, he closes with these words, seek first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness, and all these things, what things? The things you worry about, the things that you push yourself, all these things will be added to you. This is the person who's powered up, but is still pushing his own life, trying to make it work on his own or on her own. But then there is the mower that is self-propelled. Here is the mower that you can walk behind and it is moving around on its own. Here is the mower that has the ability, you just hold on to it and it'll drag you across the yard. And yet, think about this. This mower to me represents the Christian who has bought into the power and has at his disposal what he needs, but he just refuses to turn it on. You see, the self-propelled mower does not have to operate only in self-propelled fashion. You can turn it off. You have to turn it on. Listen to the words of James in chapter 4. You lust, you do not have. You fight or you murder and you covet, you do not have. You fight and war, yet you do not have. You do not have because you do not ask. The self-propelled mower is the Christian who has the power of Jesus at his disposal. And through the Spirit that intercedes in prayer, the self-propelled that says, okay, this thing can take me places, prayer. It can take me to places that I can't even imagine. I can accomplish so much because through prayer, God operates in my life. And yet, so many of us never flip the button to be fully self-propelled with the prayer power that resides in Christianity. Isn't that sad? And yet there are many Christians, many of us, that's the struggle. The riding lawnmower, I think, represents now the person who really understands the things of God. Now this person is strengthened in a way that they've never been before. Now they are sitting there and the mower, Jesus, is driving them. They are actually using the strength and the power that God motivates them with to be what they need to be. Paul would write to the Ephesians in chapter 3, I pray that you would be strengthened with might by His Spirit in the inner man, also found in Colossians 1 in verse 11. The riding mower is the Christian who has the full power within himself. And this strength is what's driving him along. And this is what is happening in his life. This is his life. No more is he pushing. No more is he pulling. No more is it all about him. Now it's about me letting God control things. Now it's about me letting Jesus be the one that rides my life. It's not like the one who rides around in a car with a bumper sticker that says, God is my co-pilot. Because God won't be a co-pilot. He will only be a pilot. You got to let go and let Him run the ship. And the riding mower to me represents the one who now has this power that he is allowing God to use his life. Finally, fifth, the mower that every man wants and covets. Oh. I've been out on the golf course and I've seen these tractors. And behind these tractors is an arrangement of mowers about half the size of a football field. And my first thought is, wow, if I powered that up in my front yard, it would be mowed in 5 seconds. Yeah. You remember Tim the Tool Man? He was always powering things up, making them bigger and better and more wonderful. There it is. There aren't many guys in this room who wouldn't give an eye tooth to say, let me get behind that rig just one time. What it represents to me is a Christian who understands what God has to offer. It's the Christian who understands all of the power that is available, far more power than we are ever even willing to admit sometimes. Look at 1 Peter chapter 4 in verse 10 beginning. As each one has received a gift, even so minister the same to one another as good stewards of the manifold riches of God. If one speaks, let him speak as the oracles of God. If ministry, let him minister according to the ability of God. Now notice the last words of the verse. That in all things, God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. This is the mower of the Christian who is using fully all of his or her God-given talents. And in the process of using them, developing even more. And who is getting the glory? God is. Not the person, but God is. And there's not a person, I'm convinced, in this room tonight, but who says, that's what I want. I want to be on board so much with the Lord that I'm using all of my talents and all my opportunities. And I'm making full use of the gifts that God has given me. And because of that, God is glorified through my life. You would not be here tonight if that were not the desire of your heart. These are the different mowers that represent different types of Christians to me. But now we need to think about this. Even though they are all different, they all have the same needs. For instance, every one of those mowers needs guidance. You can't just start the mower and turn it loose. It will do what it wants, but it won't do what you want. Isn't it interesting that Jeremiah would say in chapter 10 and verse 23, "O Lord, I know it is not in man, that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his own paths." Just imagine starting up that tractor. Lock the transmission in place so that it will drive and go. Turn on the mower and get off. Will it cut? Will it mow? Will it go? Absolutely. But what will it look like? What will happen? I'll tell you, it'll crash eventually. Any Christian who tries to say, "God, I don't need you, I'll handle this myself," will crash eventually. Number two, each one of these mowers needs maintenance. You know, after a while, you have to put oil in it. After a while, you have to clean it up, or it's going to blow up. Paul said to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 12, "Now to him who thinks he stands, take heed, lest he fall." There's not one of us in here tonight who doesn't need maintenance. There's not one of us in here who has arrived at the point that we don't need anything. There's not one of us in here who can say, "I don't need a checkup." We all need maintenance. And you know what? Part of what we get from being here is maintenance. That's part of the value of our being together. Number three, every one of those mowers can do good. Every one. All of those mowers can do some great things. In fact, they can do some powerful things. You've seen the mowers on the side of roads that they can turn up on the side and chop off limbs of trees to clear paths. They can all do some powerful things to aid and benefit life. Matthew 7 and verse 12, "Whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. This is the law and the prophets." We have potential for good. Everyone in this room has the potential to do something beneficial for others and for the cause of Christ. Every single one. Not me because I'm not valuable. Not true. Everyone here does something good. Even that mower that we started with can do some good. It cuts grass. So don't say you can't do, because every Christian is valuable. But number 4, every mower can also be destructive. I went over to mow Marge and Orrin's yard, and Orrin came out and said, Mrs. Nearhoof doesn't want you to cut that down. I said, I understand. I got it. But it could have. And every mower cuts exactly what you want, but it'll also cut what you do not want. You might be paying attention somewhere else as the mower steers over into your wife's rose garden. You might as well just stay on that tractor and head south. Just stay right on, because that's about all the hope you have. They can be destructive. Paul said to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 20, when I come and see you, I fear that I will find you such as I would not like, and that you would find me such as you would not like. For I hear that there are contentions and jealousies and wrath and whisperings among you. Those same mowers that can cut that grass and make it look so nice can level those plants that you spent so much time planting. And as Christians, we can be so good and so beneficial and so kind and so supportive and so encouraging. And that same tongue can turn right around and slice and dice and chop and destroy the very ones we ought to be encouraging. That's just how things are. That's just how it is. And we have to be careful. But finally, every single mower leaves a mark. You know it has been there. One of the beautiful things about going to a professional baseball game is to notice the cutting patterns that they leave. And when you go on a bright, sunny day, and they've just cut it, and it's a beautiful day, and you can see the patterns that they cut intentionally. They all leave marks. Philippians chapter 2, verse 12. Paul, writing there, says to those Christians to work out their own salvation with fear and trembling. Part of what he intended for them, verse 15, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault, in a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. You're making a difference. You are leaving behind an effect. You, by your actions, by what we do, we are leaving behind a mark. And someone is looking at that mark, and they're going to follow that mark because it is left in a beautiful and a wonderful fashion leading to Jesus. Or they're going to follow that mark, but that mark damaged and hurt and destroyed, and it leads to the devil. But the marks that we leave, we can't help but leave. And whatever mark we leave, somebody will follow. I do believe that Charlie's right. I think a Christian can very much be like a lawnmower. I leave those thoughts for your consideration, and I hope that they will be of such that maybe when you're riding down the road as a family, one of the children will remind you, hey, remember that a Christian's like a lawnmower. Oh, yeah. And that'll generate some conversation. That will be good. Tonight, if you're tired of pushing your life by yourself and you're ready to let the Lord take over, if you'll give your life to Him, believe that He is who He said He was, and in penitent confession of Him, say, here I am, Lord, tell me what to do. And His words are simple. He who believes and is baptized will be saved. Or if you're ready to tap into that power that is there because you are a child of God, and you're ready to tap into that power instead of just leaving it in the background, we're ready to help you. We're here for you. Let us stand and sing together.